Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining today's session on how to prepare for Microsoft certification. So, as the name suggests, we'll go through some of the preparation tactics and advice from Keith, who is our speaker, and how you can go about certification, things you should be knowing before you go out for it, and how you can prepare for the certification. And as I mentioned, our speaker Keith, he is Power Platform Solution Architect at ANS Group, and he is also the Microsoft MVP and a certified trainer. So he is going to take us through a session for next 1 hour and give us the guidance on it. And before we get started, I just want to share that this session is recorded and recording will be provided through YouTube channel, and there is certificate of participation at the end of session. So you can claim it at the end of session and also join our community if you're joining our session for the first time. That's it from my side, and the stage is over to Keith.
That's great. Thank you, Surag. Can I just check, is my screen showing up okay?
Yep. Video okay, the audio is fine as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, yeah, thank you, Surag. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you to Stiava for asking me to speak. I really appreciate it. As Surag mentioned, we're going to go through how to prepare for Microsoft certifications. So a bit about me. Surag gave me a very good introduction there, but as he mentioned, I'm a Microsoft MVP, a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm also a Power Platform solution architect for ANS Group here in the UK as well. I also do other teaching and educational things, like I'm a LinkedIn learning instructor as well. So if anyone wants to connect with me, please do. I'm always happy to help. If anyone's got any questions or wants to follow up with anything, just search for my name or scan the QR code that we can see just now. So what we're going to look at today are what are Microsoft certifications, the benefits of taking them, some learning resources, which will be one of the key ones to prepare for the exams, and some study tips as well. So first up, let's have a look at what are Microsoft certifications. So some of us may have taken some of these already, and some of us might be new to them and see people who post on LinkedIn things like these funny looking blue badges and wonder what they are. So the current Microsoft certifications, they word them as role-based certifications. So that is really based on the role that you're doing now or the role that you would want to do. So if you want to be an app maker, there's a path for that. If you want to be a developer or a solution architect, there are also paths for those as well. Now, this is a little different. A few years ago, Microsoft had product-based certifications. So if you wanted to learn something specific like Windows Server, a certain version, or SQL Server, then there would be exams just for those. However, Microsoft have changed tactic in recent years and realized that many roles out there, you need to learn what you would actually do for that job. And also that job might entail using many different software products as well. So data engineer, you might be using several different tools, including SQL Server, including data lakes and Synapse and many other tools as well. So these new role-based ones might contain multiple products, but also good practices on how to use them as well. Now, with certifications, typically you earn a certification by taking one or more exams. Most commonly, it's just one exam earns you the certification, but they are seen as two separate things. And we'll cover those a bit later on as well. In terms of the actual certification types, many of them have got these blue badges, which look kind of similar, but I'll just explain what they are. So those three that we've got are some of the more common ones that we might see for technical exams. So on the left-hand side, we've got the fundamentals. Now, this is often a really good starting point to say, I want to learn the concepts of how something works, like Azure or Power Platform or Microsoft 365. Then when you look at the other two, the associate and the expert, these are often referred to as role-based exams. So with these, it's almost like a medium and then an advanced level, those two, and they have an expiry of 1 year. What we'll do is later on, we'll cover what renewals we need to do to keep those certifications active, because within that 12 months, we can actually do a renewal, which will keep it active for another 12 months. And that just means you're keeping up to date with the changes for that exam, that certification. Now, the one on the left, the first one that I mentioned, fundamentals, they do not expire. So there's good and bad with that. The good thing is that you take them once, you have them forever. They don't expire. However, if the products do change, then maybe we're not keeping fully up to date with those basic changes. So they all play a part. They're all important. I'll go through my journey a bit later on, but I really started with some of the fundamentals to get those basics because I was brand new to this field. And then after that, I looked at some of the associate and expert levels and kind of had a path that took me forward. I should say as well, there are some other exams that we can take. There's ones called specialty ones. So if you want to specialize in a certain field like Cosmos DB or SAP workloads for Azure, there are certain exams that let you specialize beyond these three that we see here. And there are also things like a Microsoft Certified Educator. So if you're in training or teaching, and Microsoft Office, so you can take exams based on Word and Excel and all the parts of the Office system, often known as Microsoft Office Specialist or MOS. So when I started looking at these, I actually did find there were so many Microsoft credentials, all these different certifications and exams. I'll be honest, I didn't know where to start. It was a bit overwhelming. I didn't have any friends who'd taken any, so I couldn't ask them questions. And I really didn't know where to get started. So the intention of this session was really, I wanted to share this knowledge with others because I know when I started, I struggled to get started and which one should I take first? How much does it cost? What does the exam look like? I didn't know any of this. So I'm going to share some of that today. Now, the screenshot we have right there is of the Microsoft certifications chart. Now, I do appreciate that's not going to be readable because I've zoomed out quite far, but I just really wanted to show the scope of how many different certifications that are currently out there with Microsoft. What we might be able to read from this is we've got columns like infrastructure, data and AI, and many others as well. So these are almost like the technology stacks or the domains where those exams sit. Now on the rows, starting at the top, we've got fundamentals. So again, that was that starting point, just to say learn the basics. Then the next bigger column, that row, the second row is the role based. That's with all the associate and expert. And then at the bottom, where there's a row with only 4 certifications there, they're the specialty ones I mentioned with very, very niche use cases if you want to become an expert or a specialist in a certain area. So if I zoom in on that top left corner, where we can see the green outline, we can see that at the top, we've got fundamentals. So this is Azure Fundamentals. So that's the name of the certification. And then below that on the black bar where it says AZ900 or AZ900, depending where you come from, that is the code for the exam that you would take for that certification. And you can see below that there are 2 other certifications too. So typically in that case, we need to pass one exam to earn that one certification called Azure Fundamentals. Now, there are many certifications and many exams. What I would say is that this is going to be personal to you. And the journey I took is likely going to be different from the journey you took. And I've really kind of found this out as I've gone along on my journey, depending on the job that I've been doing and also the job that I wanted to move to as well. So consider things we mentioned before. What do you need for your current job? What could be useful? What gaps or skills that you would really like to have to elevate the job you've got or bridge any gaps in that knowledge? Also consider what you do, what you might need for the job that you want to be doing. Are you going for promotion or a move within your organization? Are you searching for a new job? All these things you might say, well, right now I'm a developer, but I'd love to be an architect. I'd love to move up into that kind of design space. I'd love to move to AI, data engineering, because it's the cool new thing. Consider what you might want to move to next, and that might inform what your path might be. So for me, I'll share my journey very, very briefly, because again, this will be personal to all of you. I appreciate that. Now, for me, we can see the green outline there. Because I was a general consultant and a general developer, mostly with .NET and some on-prem, but also doing more with Azure and now Power Platform, I'd actually jumped between many tech stacks and many roles. So because I wore many hats, I decided to take all of the fundamentals in order. Because if I'm in a conversation about networking or security or data and AI, I want to at least understand the basics. I know these fundamentals won't make me experts in those areas, but if I'm joining a conversation or working with management and need to understand what those concepts are, I know them from a basic level. The next part of my journey, I actually then took the vertical, which you can see is under business applications, but it's specifically the Power Platform. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to become a specialist in that, and I'm now at the architect level. So those exams were particularly useful for me because they would actually prepare me for that role. I knew I wouldn't know it already. I knew I wouldn't have time to try all of the hundreds of services and options and configurations, but the exams put me a good understanding that would help me with my knowledge first. But secondly, if I applied for a job, I can say, look, I passed these exams, I've got these certifications, I know enough to be able to pass this exam, so my level of understanding must be strong. Now, as you can see from these green outlines that I've highlighted for the examples I've taken, this is sometimes known as T-shaped. So the T, because of the shape of it, is really I've got this broad understanding that's horizontal, but the vertical means that I've actually delved quite advanced into one specific area as well. Some people also take something where they may have more than one vertical. They might have Azure as well as Power Platform, or a combination of two or three. And that's when you get dual MVPs, or people have three categories for their MVP, or not just MVPs, anyone who's very skilled in the area that doesn't do much community work. It really is up to you what your path is and what skills you want. So sometimes when there's more than one vertical, it's known as M-shaped. In terms of benefits, this is actually from Microsoft's marketing material, but they've actually had some research. We can see the citations at the bottom from IDC Infobrief, Pearson VUE, and so on. And you can see that there are several different statistics. I won't go through them in detail just here, but we can see the things that organizations believe that, these kind of credentials are very important for skills training. People who've taken these exams and passed the credentials are actually confident in their skills. Personally, I feel that way because I've had to understand it to a level I can pass an exam in it. So, I might not get 100% in the exam, and we'll talk about exam scores in a moment. But the fact that you've been able to understand it and do your studying means that you've put time in to understand how it works. So again, there are many ways it can make you effective in that role, but also many ways recruiters and managers can see you as effective and quite appealing for recruitment as well. In terms of taking the exams themselves, some of us here may have taken these. So I've taken a few already. I've got 12 certifications myself. I do have a roadmap to study for some more as well. Now, the options we've got at the moment are two. You can go to a test center if your region has one, and that's my personal choice because it's almost like being back at school. You're in the room, no one comes or goes, it's quiet, you can focus on the exam. That personally works really well for me. The other option is known as an online proctored exam, which is a fancy way of saying you can take it home on your own PC. Now, I should say I've not taken this, but I know many people who have and like that approach. It means you don't need to travel somewhere. That's already a bonus. But I've also heard that there are some restrictions. So it may be that you can only use one monitor. It may be that you can't have certain software running on your PC or your laptop when you take it. No one can come and leave the room. You have to be in the room by yourself. And also the proctor or the person watching you taking the exam would watch you over the webcam to make sure that you're not cheating as well. So there are restrictions and considerations, and it's worth bearing them in mind when you decide to book an exam. I should say as well, with some of those role-based exams, the associate and the expert, is that some of them may contain labs or performance-based testing, they call them. And this is where they might actually spin up an environment and you actually have to use practical skills to build a solution that they then assess to say, yes, you've built it correctly. So most of the exams I've found are things like multiple choice and other types of questions, but do be aware you may get these labs and practical exercises with some of them. In terms of taking the exams and the duration you may get, we can see this table here. This is from the Microsoft Learn website, and you can learn much more there as well. So we can see things that we've got things like fundamental exams. You get an exam duration of 45 minutes, but also there's something there called a seat duration, which is 65 minutes. Now, the reason there's actually two different values is the seat duration means that you can actually turn up to the exam a little early. You've got time to read through the terms and conditions or any non-disclosure agreements, any NDAs. And then at the end of the exam, you also get some time to give feedback on any questions if you think there were any kind of issues or errors or problems with them. Now, the time that you get for those activities do not eat into your exam. Your 45 minutes for that fundamentals exam will still be there, but you do get a few minutes either side to deal with these other things. And it's the same with the other exams as well. When you take an exam, these technical exams, they have 1,000 points. You need to have 700 or more points to pass the exam. So it's not quite a percentage, it's points based the way they've made it. And I found that when I've taken an exam, I tend to get the results pretty much immediately after the exam. So I've taken 12 now, and every time within a minute of taking the exam on the screen, it's actually refreshed and gave me the score and gave me the result. So I've not found a long wait, but it may be different depending on the exam that you take. When you do take an exam, you tend to get this analysis afterwards. So for me, this was my Microsoft Azure AI fundamentals, the date that I took it, if I passed or failed. Luckily, I passed this one. That was nice. If I had, what score I had, what the passing score was, which is 700 across them all. But also, quite importantly, we can see the bar chart at the bottom. Now, for this, it's not telling us exactly which questions we got correct and not, but it is saying for the things it's testing us in the exam, these 5 categories for this exam, what range my score was in, what rough percentage was that in. So we can see if I was to fail that exam and one of those scores was very, very low, I knew that if I need to do a retake, exactly what areas I might need to spend more time on to be better prepared for the exam. If you are lucky enough to pass an exam, they do send you an email. It looks a bit like this one right here. This is when I took the Power Platform Solution Architect Expert certification. And on there, you'll get some links and instructions on how to claim your badge, those blue badges that we saw. And there are some links where you can share them online on social media, and you can actually celebrate that with everyone else in the community as well. If you don't pass the exam, you know what? It's not the end of the world. It's absolutely fine. They are tough exams. I found them all difficult in different ways. And someone wiser than me said, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. So if you do fail the exam, you can always do a retake. You can always rebook it, go for a retake, try again, do some more study, get yourself prepared, and just give it your best shot the next time. Now, in terms of the renewals, I mentioned they're taking the exam in the first place, but like we said, with some of them, you've got a 1 year expiry. So the way you would want to renew that exam is actually much more straightforward than taking the exam in the first place. So remember, when we took the exam, we go to a test center or take it from home. We have to pay for that exam. We have to book a time slot for the exam. But when it comes to renewing it, ideally before it expires, the renewals are free. You can take them at home and you don't have anyone watching you over the camera. You do it in your own time, and they're much shorter than the first exam you take. So remember, the first exam you take is the tough one. That's the one where you've got to spend lots of time, money, book a slot, and do that. The renewals you can even have another screen open. They call it open book. So you could maybe look things up if you're struggling with some of the questions. That is an option because it's at home. Now, often they're much shorter as well than the original exam. They're known as like an assessment because they're really assessing you on things that have changed since you took that first exam. So if a few new features have come out, they'll want to test to say, are you up to date with your information? If you are, you get the results straight away on the screen. It's very, very straightforward, I find. There's also a 6-month renewal window. So let's say if I've taken an exam today, September, it would expire September next year. But actually in 6 months' time, I'll get an email reminder from Microsoft Learn saying, hey, your certification will expire within 6 months. You can take your renewal today. You can take it from today until it expires. If you then take it any time within the 6-month window, and let's say you pass, your certification will then have 12 months added on to the expiry date you had in the first place. So it's not from the day you've passed that assessment, that renewal, it's added to the end. So it pays to do the renewal as soon as you can. Now we're talking about Microsoft certifications as well. There's also a different type of credential that they brought out fairly recently called Microsoft Applied Skills. So with these, they target real world scenarios and a bit more like the lab that I mentioned earlier, where you actually have to actually build something and they assess if you built it according to the spec that they've asked for. So with this, you can do this online for free at home. You don't need to go to an exam center or pay any money. And they're quite new. So new ones are being added all the time. And they're another consideration, another credential to bear in mind. I do appreciate that the certifications with the blue badges have been around for years. They're very well known, but I do believe that applied skills are useful because this is what you'd actually be doing in the job. You'd actually be building a Power App, something in Azure. So that's what they test you against. When you compare the certifications on the left with the applied skills on the right, you can see there's a comparison here. I won't go through them all, but you can see, how you take those exams or how you take the tests, what the scope or the context of them are. So it's worth bearing them in mind as well. In terms of applied skills, I mentioned many more are coming out all the time. Last time I checked, there were 26 available, but more keep getting added all the time. So we can see some examples on the screen right now, such as building an Azure AI vision solution, administering Active Directory domain services, and there are many, many more as well. So next up, I think this is going to be one of the more valuable sections because this is really going to be about learning resources to prepare for those exams. And there are so many options out there. I've tried to curate them and give a good breakdown of some of my favorites personally. And also if people I've asked in the community what works well for them. So the first place I always go to is Microsoft Learn. So Microsoft Learn is Microsoft's learning platform. They offer it for free. It's always my starting point, and it's often the most up-to-date resource because it's coming from Microsoft. They're the ones with the exams and the certifications, but also, they've got really good learning paths. We can see some on the screen right now, things like learning paths, career paths, and so on. And often the learning material very closely matches what they expect to see in the exam. So instead of going around all the different bits of documentation and trying to find it all together, it would actually prepare you quite closely, in many cases, to what they look for in the exam. So it's a very, very good place to look first. One thing they have on Microsoft Learn for each exam is something called Skills Measured as well. So let's say if I was taking the Azure Fundamentals exam, or let's say the Power Platform Fundamentals exam, they may have a breakdown like the screenshot we've got there on the right. So this is saying the skills that we're going to test you on in this exam are the following bullet points. They'll also contain more information further down in the document to break down these skills at a glance into more subpoints, finer details of what they'll look for. So I won't go through all of these, but we can see the first one there is describe the business value of Microsoft Power Platform. This will take up 20 to 25% of the exam. We know it's a big part of the exam, right? When we go further down, second from last, we can see demonstrate the capabilities of Power Pages, only 1 to 5% of the exam. So if, again, you go to an exam and there's maybe 50 questions, you can imagine there won't be many on Power Pages, but there might be quite a few on the business value. So the exam you go for, if you look at these skills measured, it's different for every exam. It will give you an idea of what they're going to be looking to ask you about on the exam. So you won't go in completely cold. You will have an expectation of what they're going to ask. If you are brand new to taking Microsoft exams, something that came out fairly recently, which is really valuable, is something called the Microsoft Exam Sandbox. So this is where you can demo the Microsoft certification exam experience, and they give you a demo of the UI of what it would look like very closely to when you take an exam. So in the screenshot there, you can see things in the top right corner, like time remaining, the exam question progress, how far along you are, the question and the answers, and also the different answer types. Sometimes you get them like this with a multiple choice. Sometimes there'll be a build list. Okay, what is the correct order for these steps? Sometimes there'll be drag and drop or something else. But using this is a good way of seeing, okay, there's big buttons for next and previous. I can leave feedback on this question. I know how far along I am in the exam and how much time I have remaining. So if you're brand new to this, this gives you a good familiarity of what to expect before you go to the exam. Very, very useful. Another fairly recent development on this is all Microsoft Learn, by the way. I mean, there's so much material there. It's really, really useful. One of them is the exam readiness zone. And this is where Microsoft, they've put together some other videos that help boost your learning for a particular exam or a particular topic. So in this case, we can see a screenshot. We can see the very first one there is a video on what to expect on your Microsoft Fundamentals exam. It's 12 minutes, 43 seconds long. And we can see many other exams, videos as well, rather. This is a small screenshot. There's actually a longer list than this. But if you're lucky enough, let's say I'm going for the AZ 700 exam, I could do a search on here and actually see on the screen right now, there are several videos for AZ 700, 5 videos available. So if I've gone through Microsoft Learn with all the reading first and any kind of exercises they provide, and I think I just need a bit more study, this is another good place. You can watch some videos and actually learn a bit more about them as they explain the concepts and maybe give you a demo on how it works in a video as well. So again, it's another way to prepare and study for these exams. Another thing that can be useful as well, and I always do this before I take an exam, if I've got time, is that I've done all my studying, I've done all the reading, I think, great, I think I understand this. The next thing is a practice assessment. So another part of Microsoft Learn, yet again, so much there. It's called practice assessments, and I believe most of, many of the exams contain this now. The screenshot there is one of the questions for the exam PL 900, which is the Microsoft Power Platform Fundamentals. And what this is typically multiple choice questions. It would go through, ask you the question with the answers. You would then select one of these, check your answer, or actually tell you if you're correct or not, but importantly, provide you links to Microsoft Learn where you can learn more. So if I'd answered this and I'd answered it incorrectly, I might think, I need to understand this a bit more. Let me click on the link, jump me back to Microsoft Learn, refresh my memory, or learn a bit more on this subject. So if I take some practice assessments before the real exam that I've paid for, this would give me a good score to say, I think I'm getting high scores. I've got a good chance of passing the real exam that I've paid money for. So this is really good. Another tip as well, I'll give you on the practice assessment. You can see a question 1 to 50. At the end of it, it'll give you a percentage and say, hey, you got 85%. This would be a good score that might help you pass the real exam. If you refresh that page and start a new practice assessment, those 50 questions for the assessment are chosen at random from a big selection of questions. So you can take this once, get a good score, hit refresh, go through it again, and you might get different questions the next time. They might push you in different areas and ask you other questions that help you prepare even more for that real exam. There's also something as well here called Microsoft Cloud Events. I've actually done a screenshot of the Microsoft Cloud UK events, but many other regions have these as well. So before they used to offer something on the right-hand side called virtual training days. Now, I started a few years ago and I actually went to in-person training days before the pandemic hit. But since the pandemic, many of them moved to virtual training days where you could actually see pre-recorded webinars by Microsoft certified trainers or someone else who's an instructor or a trainer taking you through to prepare you for a certain exam or for a certain topic in the Microsoft technology stack. Again, it's another free option of getting that learning before you take the exam. Very, very useful. We can see there as well, there are other options as well, like Azure Hackathon and Azure Discovery Hour. And you can see some of them don't have events scheduled just yet. Some of them may do, but if you check back regularly, you can see when new events get added. The hackathons can be fun. It's a bit more like a game, a bit more of an event. Some of them, again, if you read into them, they may be useful in your preparation for those exams. YouTube, of course, is a fantastic resource. There's so much up there, and most of it's free. You might get a few adverts shown on there, but really, you typically don't need to pay for this kind of content. What you can see there, I've actually highlighted John Saville's technical training. He's particularly good with Azure training courses. He typically opens up a big whiteboard behind him, draws on the whiteboard and explains things very clearly, and often gives you things like study crams to say, I will prepare you for this exam within 1 hour and I'll explain all the big topics. It's a good refresher before an exam. It's very visual. I find it's a good way for me personally to learn. There are many other good instructors out there as well. One thing I'll mention though, YouTube and any other learning resource, whether it be a book, whether it be a video or an online training course, consider how up to date those courses are. So with these Microsoft certification exams, some of them might change every few months. Some of them might change once or twice a year. They quite frequently change because the Microsoft services change. Some get added, some get retired, some get name changes. You know, Microsoft Azure Active Directory, there's now Microsoft Entra. Some things change. So if the learning material you go from is up to date and recent, you're going to be quite confident you're learning the correct, accurate material. If you're going to a YouTube video that's 5 years old, but your exam changed only 1 year ago, you may be learning out of date information. So please just be aware how up to date that information is. So next up, I'll mention books. Personally, I've not used any books to prepare for exams, but I've heard very good things for them as well. Prices will vary. There are platforms like Amazon and many others where you can purchase them from as well. Again, bear in mind how up to date. We can see this this book right there is a second edition. It's been kept up to date as of May 2023. They're quite clear when this was updated. If you find the exam has changed since then, maybe this book is a bit old. It's maybe not the best book to get. Just worth bearing in mind. There are many great online platforms as well. So Udemy is one I'll mention. Now, the way their payment model works is that you typically pay per course. I've bought a few from here. They've been very good. It depends on the instructor you go for. I've actually used Scott Duffy, who we can see right here. I was lucky enough to interview Scott on my podcast recently as well. Now, Scott's very good and he makes a good point of keeping his courses up to date, as do many other instructors. So again, you can see there he's clearly put in the title, April 2024. He's making a point of when it was updated, so you know it's not a 5-year-old course. It's not old information. One little tip I'll give anyone who wants to use Udemy, I've been happy using them, is they very regularly have sales. So you can see this sale we've got on screen right now. That course is £11.99 in UK money. But if it wasn't on sale, it would be £59.99. So unless you're in a hurry to buy them, check often in case a new sale comes on and you can save a lot of money. Another popular one is Pluralsight. They do many good online training courses. I've been a fan of them for years as well. I've used them on and off. Their model is a bit different. Typically, you pay for a monthly subscription and there are different tiers of subscription. One tip I'll give is that there are some basic subscriptions which are a bit cheaper, but there are also some premium ones, and some of them come with certification preparation courses and practice exams and things like that. But you may find they're in the more expensive premium tiers. So it depends what you want to get out of these courses when you watch them and what your budget is. Can you afford it? Another very good one I've been a fan of for years is LinkedIn Learning. So with this, you need LinkedIn Premium subscription. Again, that's a monthly payment. If you're lucky enough to be a LinkedIn Learning instructor, like myself, or a Microsoft MVP, or your company provides that subscription, you may have that subscription already. Otherwise, you may need to pay every month. Now, before I had this as a benefit, I was actually paying to use this for years because I was a big fan of LinkedIn Learning. I would always try and learn a new thing every week, time allowing, because I like to keep expanding my horizons where I could. It's not just technical courses as well. They've got ones on leadership, AI, communication, presentation skills. So there's a lot of learning material, very, very good. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn Learning. Also, if you work for a Microsoft partner as well, luckily I do at the moment, you may have access to Microsoft Partner University. So this is where you can log in. This is where your company in this partner university, it's free. You don't pay any more, and you may get access to training courses, which is other video courses to prepare you for these different exams as well. So you can see a screenshot there, some topics. There are different exams that you can see as well. Again, another place I would recommend checking how up to date the courses are. I found they've always been good when I've watched them, but some of them have been slightly out of date, a bit older material. So again, you probably don't want to invest too much time learning material that's maybe out of date. So just always check that refresh date, the latest update date on any course to be sure it's the most up-to-date information. So another thing I'll mention as well is Microsoft Learning Partners or training service partners. Now, these are typically third-party training companies. So in the UK, we might have ones like Learning Tree or QA, and there are many more. I've used both of them. They've both been very good in the past, where they could actually provide an instructor. Some of them offer virtual courses, or you can go into an actual in-person training center, or they can come to your office. But typically, you'd pay more because you'd be paying for an instructor or a Microsoft certified trainer who's got those skills. So, does you or your company have that budget? It's up to you. Prices would vary. Now, the benefits with that, you've got someone in person to help. It may be over one day or several days, but also you've got someone on hand to ask questions. So you may have your team, your development team, the trainer comes in, you speak to them, and you may say to the trainer, look, we already know about Power Apps, you can skip that one, but we need to learn more about Dataverse. Can you spend more time on that, please? So they may be able to be more flexible. That's where the value comes from, but there's also cost with that as well. Another thing as well, I've not used these, but I've heard good things about the Microsoft official practice tests. So remember previously we talked about the practice assessments. They're free. They're on Microsoft Learn, and you can hit, refresh or F5, and you may get a different mix of 50 questions each time. These official practice ones, there is a cost. You pay for it, you get access to it, and there are some good benefits like an instant score report, and they give you some detailed answers and references as well to help you learning on areas that you might be weak on. So I've not taken them. I've heard good things, but again, I found there's so many good free learning resources. I've not had to pay or use this level yet, but I thought I'd make everyone aware of it. The next thing I want to mention, and I actually find this quite important because we've talked so far about things you can find, many of them free, some of them there's a cost associated, right? But also, if you're a permanent employee, if you work for an organization, consider what support your employer could provide to you. Now, by this, I mean, can they provide training? Are they going to pay for an instructor to come to your office? Are they going to give you a Pluralsight subscription? Did they have one already? There may be one there, but they've not told you they have one, or they've not communicated well enough that one is there and that you can use it. Or you might ask your manager, like, I really want to do this Udemy course, I just can't afford it, or I would like some support from you. Could you help contribute towards the cost? And see, would they give you some support there? Again, we talked about contributing costs. Those exams cost money. Would they be willing to contribute fully or partially to the cost of the exam? Many organizations were able to speak up and ask our management this, or it might be on the intranet or in your benefits that they offer this already. If they do, take full advantage, because there are benefits to your employer for doing this as well. Also, while money is important, for many of us are very busy. We're busy with work, we're busy with life, we have many commitments. So it may not just be the money support you're after, it may be the time support. And some of us, that's more important. So it may be that, hey, I'm a consultant, I have no customers next week. Can I use some of that time to study? Does my organization offer learning and development days where I could book a day a month or half a day a month or something to spend some study time during work hours? Do they offer that? If not, can you ask them if they would offer that? Because what's in it for them? They wouldn't just be giving money away. What they would get in return is they would get trained employees. We looked at the benefits early on, didn't we? We saw people with the exams feel more confident. Many employers say, wow, they really know their stuff because they passed the exams. They're really valuable now. They really know what to do. So they're going to get the benefits if you're fully trained up with these exams. And again, we mentioned before about Microsoft partnerships. Right now, I work for Microsoft Partner, a very good one. Now, part of the partnership means that we work with Microsoft on different projects. We've got contacts at Microsoft. It may depend on the organization, but to keep a Microsoft partnership for a company, they need certain requirements. And some of them might be to have employees who've passed several Microsoft certifications and exams. So if they want to become a partner or they're already a Microsoft partnership and want to keep being an active partner, it's in their interest to have employees like you who have these exams passed so they can maintain the partnership. And many companies with that partnership get many benefits from Microsoft for being a partner. So again, there's a lot in it for your boss, your employer, if you have these certifications. So do remember that when you're requesting any kind of support that we mention here. And in this last section, we did cover a lot. I mean, I know we're going through a lot of material, but I do find all this is valuable. So I didn't want to make this any shorter because there's so much useful information here, I think, based on the years that I've taken Microsoft exams. So next up, I want to look at some study tips. This is really when we go for the exam. We're going to book the exam, take the exam, what could be useful for us. So first up, and I think this is one of the most important parts, is managing exam stress. Many of us find that exams, tests, assessments, even job interviews, there's a stress associated with them because you are being tested. You're also, trying to give your best impression. You're trying to do your best, of course. And for some people, they do find that brings a lot of pressure. I get certain level of exam stress. I know some people who are very, very intelligent who actually get so much exam stress, they often fail the exams, even though they know the knowledge for the questions they're being asked, because the stress has just overtaken them and overwhelmed them. It does affect us all in different ways. And for me, looking after our own mental health and handling that stress and getting the right support for any stress or worries or concerns that you feel, whether you're at school, college, university, or taking these technical exams, is really important. You've got to look after yourself. And if it means speaking with friends and family or colleagues or searching online, like these resources we can see on the screen right now, and there are many others out there, how to take time out, how to, try and de-stress, get enough sleep, be healthy, all these things so it doesn't take over your life and doesn't worry you too much. So yeah, do what's right for you. Now, next up, we want to prepare for the exams. Now, we've already gone through this. We've gone through Microsoft Learn, the many different things that they offer on there, which is super, super valuable. But again, if you did have a budget or you found sales out there or you had the money, you can get books, you can pay for other courses. You could ask friends or colleagues, what have they done to prepare for that exam? Did they take it recently? How did they find it? Do the preparation, but much of that has been covered in this session already. And if you have prepared, then be confident that you're ready for the exam. Maybe not overconfident like this gentleman right here, but you can maybe be confident and say, well, look, I've taken several practice assessments. I've gone through Microsoft Learn. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos and I feel, yeah, I think I'm really ready for this exam. So let's go all in, be confident and give it your best shot. Some tips for the actual exam as well. One of them is to read the question properly. Now, I've found personally some of these exams to be very difficult, and some of the questions can sometimes not appear quite clear when I read them the first time. I don't think Microsoft or anyone is deliberately giving us trick questions, but sometimes the wording is a little bit tricky or difficult to understand. So I've read through some questions, which of these services would you use to do ABC? Sometimes the question might be worded a different way. Which of these services would you not use to perform ABC? So it's sometimes if you read too quickly, you might not get the correct understanding. So take your time. You do get enough time for these exams and try read them through and not rush. Try not to stress. And talking of using your time is using all that available time. Let's say if you're taking a fundamentals exam, we saw there was 45 minutes for them as well. Let's say if you race through them in 20, 25 minutes, you've got them all done. You're like, I've gone through this so fast. Wow, I'm doing really well. You may think, wow, are there any questions I can go back and double check? Or thinking, that last question, I'm not quite sure. Let me go back and check. If you've got time available and you can return to some of those questions, You don't get extra points for leaving the exam early. You can go back if you're available and just have another look. Have I got that right? Let me just think about this one again. There's no rush to finish well ahead of the time limit. So do use that time. One other thing as well, which is quite an important one, is to don't skip any questions. You don't get marked down if you get something wrong. You just miss out on the points. If you get it correct, you get points. So if you skip a question, you're guaranteed to get nothing for that answer. If you take a wild guess, you've got a chance of getting some points. So if you're really not sure or you're really struggling on a question, still answer anyway, but you could maybe think about which of these answers, let's say it's multiple choice, we've got 3 right here in this silly GIF that I'm showing. Okay, I've got 3. Okay, I'm going to read through them. I no idea, but I know it's not A. I know it's not A. Okay, so now I'm down to B or C. Now you've got a 50-50 chance of getting it correct. Are there any I think I've heard of this. I think I've seen this. I've never used it, but I've read about this. Just try and use educated guesses to give yourself the best chance of getting those points, because the points lead to you passing that exam. That's what we want. And one of the final ones I'll leave you with, and this always works well for me, is thinking of your answer before seeing the options. So first up, you'll see the question. In this one, what is the name of Microsoft's cloud computing service? Now, before I've blanked them out, A, B, C, and D, but before I see those questions and get confused or get bias or helps me change my mind, I might think, what would this be? If there were no multiple choice, I had to type it, what would it be? Now, Microsoft Cloud Computing Service, I've heard of Azure. It might be Azure. Okay, I'm thinking about Azure now, right? I've not read anything. I'm thinking Azure. So next up, I'll actually look at those answers that are on the screen. Okay, let me go through them all. Microsoft Beige, never heard of that, right? Microsoft Gray, I don't think so. Microsoft Azure, I was already thinking of that. So now I've got some confidence. The one I expect is now there. And Microsoft Magnolia, it sounds ridiculous. I really don't think it's that. So, okay, I'm going to go with Azure. And if you did too, then you'd be correct. It's Microsoft Azure. So just to wrap things up, because we did cover a lot there, the agenda, we really looked at what Microsoft certifications are, particularly if you're new to these. The benefits for you and your employer, again, if you're asking for support or they already offer support, which many good companies do. The different learning resources, many of them free, but some of them you can pay and actually do further study if you need. And some of those study tips on how to handle the exam and different ways of tackling any kind of test or exam as well. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you all making the time this evening and whatever time of day it is for you to join us. Again, if you've got any questions after this session, you can connect with me here. My name is Keith Atherton. It's not very common, so you can search for me online, or you can scan the QR code and connect with me on X or LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Hey Keith, thanks for taking the time and all of that. I hope everybody here was able to grasp it. There was a lot of information shared. I hope you guys will check it out. Maybe watch the recording of it, so to miss out on it. And yeah, I have shared Keith's LinkedIn over the chat box. Feel free to check out and text him if it's needed. Yeah, and I think we have some time. Should we wait for some questions or we could
Yeah,
wrap it up? Uh,
yeah, up to you. I've got a few minutes if you want to, if there's any questions, always happy to help.
Awesome. Okay. Let's give them 2 minutes. Everybody, if you have a specific questions, that might Keith can answer, feel free to ask in the chat box, and let's see if we can, get it up or answered now itself, or we can come back on it after another time.
Sounds good. Great. Yep, I'll start looking now if anything comes in. There's one question that I noticed there from Kenneth. How can we get the e-certificate? So yeah, when you take an exam, if you're lucky enough to pass the exam and earn that certification, Microsoft do send you an email, and there's actually a link there to the well, e-certificate. There's a link there to the badge and the information. Now, in Microsoft Learn, there's something called the certification dashboard, and that's where it records all of the exams and certifications that you've earned. And with that, they've got something called a transcript. So with the transcript, it actually lists all the exams you've taken and when you've taken them as well. So again, when you've taken the exam, Microsoft will send you the link on how to set that up. It's all free, and where to find that information. So I hope that's useful. Great. Any other questions? Thanks, Shirag. I expect people asking about the certificate for this session today, but yeah, thanks, Giancarlo. Appreciate that. There's a good question there. Mahmoudul, apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly. What is the cost for the exam and the validity? So again, I'll go over the validity first. So with the fundamental exams, with those, they don't expire. There's 8 of them currently, last time I checked. So things like Azure Fundamentals, Power Platform Fundamentals, you take them once, they don't expire. Now, with the role-based ones, the associate and the expert, and some of the other specialty ones, they have a 1 year expiry, and that's when you need to do the renewal to keep them active when you approach that expiry. Now, in terms of the cost, unfortunately, I'm only familiar with some of the UK pricing because it does differ depending what region you're in. But I found that the fundamental exams are often the cheaper ones. I think some of them when I took in the UK were maybe £99. When you go to the next levels up, the associate and the expert, that's when I found they were a bit more expensive. They could have been maybe £150 or more. Don't quote me on that. But when you go to the Microsoft Learn website, search for an exam, and if you scroll down to schedule the exam, they show you the cost. And there's a drop down, you can choose which region you're in. And when you select it, it tells you on the screen before you add it to a basket how much it would cost in the currency for that region. So hopefully, if you do that, that's another good way to plan to say, well, how many exams can I afford? What's worth doing? Good question. Okay, so Sushant, there's a good question there. The Azure platform, I'll give a very high level overview because there is a lot to the platform. So Azure is the Microsoft compute, it's the cloud compute platform. So there are many, those exams I mentioned, it's not just Azure. It might be Power Platform or Microsoft 365 or many other things as well. But Azure is really the cloud compute platform. So other popular ones out there would be Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud Platform or GCP. And these are really a platform you can access through the web browser, and you can spin up things like virtual machines, databases, and many, many other services as well. So instead of install them on premises in your actual own offices, you can actually use Microsoft data centers and actually manage them through the browser. It's really powerful. Great. Any other questions? Otherwise, I think we can wrap things up. My pleasure. My pleasure, sir. Um, Okay, there is a really good question just come in. That's a really good one from Hans Felix. How much time do you put into preparing for the exam? It's a great question. So this will differ for everyone. Now, when I took the first few exams, I didn't know what to expect. There wasn't the Microsoft Exam Sandbox. I didn't know what it looked like, and I didn't have any friends who'd taken any. I didn't know how long the exam took. I didn't know where to find this. So I had actually spent about 4 weeks preparing for my first Azure Fundamentals AZ900 exam. And I maybe spent about 1 hour an evening, every evening, and maybe slightly more at the weekend to work through Microsoft Learn. I also paid for a Udemy course. That was maybe another 3 or 4 hours. And I think I did some other online learning for free. I think a couple of YouTube videos. So Microsoft Learn could have been 10 hours of reading, and then I maybe spent another 6 to 7 hours of other free, apart from Udemy, online material spread across about 4 weeks, I think it was. So with new exams, sometimes it changes, but it's normally around 2 weeks or more. If I've done 2 weeks, I don't feel that I'm ready, I'll maybe do some other online learning. Check out LinkedIn Learning or check out Pluralsight to boost that knowledge. And then when I take the practice assessment and feel I'm ready, then I'll take it. This will likely differ for everyone. Some people are faster readers than me. That's absolutely fine. Some people might want to take 2 or 3 courses to really reinforce the knowledge to get the high confidence before they take the exam. It's completely up to you. Great question, though. Great.
I think
Excellent.
we
Oh,
went over
mhm.
most every questions.
I think so. Yeah. Good questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Again, thank you, Keith, for joining. It was a pleasure having you. I hope you can take a good rest after this and have a great rest of the day. Uh, and yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time to join as well. I hope you guys will try it out and get some certifications. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
good.
it. Again, Keith, thanks for joining, and thank you everybody for joining. Have a good day.
My pleasure. Good luck, everyone. Best of luck for the exams.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.